As you went back to your seats, it's Shawn and Kham, but actually Ken's probably going to be sharing the longest because she's got most of the first-hand information. So Shawn was saying, I was out of it, so if you want to get what actually happened unmistakably, then my sister needs to share. So Shawn's going to start, and then I'm going to let them decide who goes from where. So Shawn, if you come on, please. Come on, Kham. There are no snakes up here. I promise you. At least not live ones.
Well, for me, it was 1967 of June, and I found myself that we were at our church camp, and I just sort of found myself in the aisle. I didn't know how I got out of the aisle, but it was right then I just gave my life to Christ. It's been a walk ever since. So, but that's about the gist of it. It's pretty short and sweet. So I'll let my sister come up and explain what happened. And I got sick in Laos and was taken to Thailand through many different routes. Took me about a week to get there, but I'll let my sister explain the rest. Tana, why don't you?
We'll get this out of it. When she's done, we're going to pray for all three of you guys, four of you guys. Tell the sleepy guy in the back there to adjust you to your voices wherever you need to go.
Well, Shawn and Kham's journey actually began a few years ago when Shawn was introduced to Kham by a brother, cousin, I guess he would be your uncle. And about 3 years ago, Shawn took a trip. Kham was already down in Laos visiting her family. And Shawn took a trip down there to visit, and they only had Nam Phoon at the time. And Shawn had been hearing voices in his head, and it said, "You're going to meet your fate in Laos." And he didn't really know. He kept kind of disregarding the voices. And he wasn't sharing that with anybody, so he carried that burden by himself. Well, lo and behold, Kham, before Shawn got there to Thailand, there were omens and premonitions that something bad was going to happen to one of her family. And she didn't know. She thought it would be the daughter. So the funny story is, if you're sitting and a dog pees on you, then something bad is going to happen. That's an omen. And Kham thought that it was Nam Phoon, that something was going to happen to Nam Phoon, their daughter. She was about 2 at the time, 2 at the time. And so Shawn gets there, and everything's going pretty good until he ate salad, and Kham said, "Don't eat the salad. Don't eat the salad." Well, Shawn says, "Look, I'm in Thailand or Laos, and I'm going to eat the salad." So he ate the salad. Well, it was contaminated, and it had Campylobacilli. It's a bad intestinal thing that happens. Well, it wasn't but just a few hours later, he was beginning to be paralyzed. It started in his feet, and he knew he was in trouble. So they'd taken him to doctors, and it was bad diarrhea and stomach, and it wasn't but 24 hours later he was completely paralyzed in complete respiratory distress. Had to be ventilated. They'd taken him to several doctors, and they basically turned him away from several hospitals, saying that there's nothing we can do for you. You're going to die. So the communication was really bad during that time, and I didn't really fully understand the story because we had limited communication, and we had it from several sources. And so by the time I finally got the message of how bad Shawn really was, 4 days later I was landing in Thailand. He had been turned away from 3 different hospitals, I believe, at that point in time, and basically was just sort of left. So I got to the hospital in Bangkok. Kham met me at the airport with her family, and it was Udon Thani, Thailand. So they moved him out of Laos, and they moved him to Udon Thani, Thailand. And I walked in the hospital, and it was a sight, I can tell you. There was a ward of about 30 people. 10 were on this side, 10 were on this side, and 10 were on this side. And this is what they call their critical care. Shawn was in a bed, ventilated, with no IVs. The room was about 90 degrees. He had no fan. And most of the patients, I can tell you, were cared for by their family members because the nursing staff was so limited. There was a gentleman right across from Shawn who looked like he had leprosy. So we had people with communicable diseases being cared for by nurses that didn't use gloves or didn't use protection. And if they did, they transferred the gloves back. They didn't change their gloves from patient to patient. So I was mortified, needless to say, because that's not what you find in the U.S., right? So I got on the phone about 10 minutes after visiting with Shawn, and I called my husband and I said, whatever you have to do, get him out of here. You call the insurance company and we need to transport him. So my husband was such a trooper. He got the insurance guy on the phone and kind of began to explain sort of the situation with Shawn. There's more to the story, but I'll tell you, within 28 hours, Shawn was on a transport to Bangkok, to a hospital. That in itself was a miracle, I can tell you. That just doesn't happen. So as I was there, God began to just show me things in Shawn's body. And I saw a charm on Shawn's hand, and it was a Buddhist charm. And I said, just remember that he can't do anything from here down. He can't move his hands, he can't move anything. He can move his lips with the vent tube. So he would speak to me around the vent tube. And I said, what is this? He goes, off, off, take it off. So I found out later that it was a Buddhist charm that somebody had put on him. And so I got the scissors and I got the charm off. And so I started praying against the spirits that surrounded Shawn. And remember that it is Buddhist. You know, the hospital is Buddhist, everybody around is Buddhist. And before Kham came to know the Lord, she was Buddhist too, a devout one at that. She prayed daily, 3 times a day, and she was devoted. So after God showed me that, I just prayed in the Spirit and around Shawn and protecting Shawn. And then I would see things physically. So they didn't have him on IVs, and I just went like this to the nurse and I said, get him on IVs. Now, I wasn't very nice about it. So thank you, God, for forgiving me for that one. But we got him on IVs. His legs were cramping. Even though he was paralyzed, he could still feel things like cramping. So, you know, when you're dehydrated, you start cramping really badly. Well, that's what he was going through. And he would scream without screaming, without making a noise. And he was in excruciating pain. So I would just lay my hands on him and I would just pray the peace of God over Shawn as the Lord gave me, you know, what was going on with him. He told me exactly what to do and how to pray. And I just thank God for that every day. So we finally got him to the hospital, and we were in the waiting room. And at this time, Kham was still praying, and her family was praying, you know, to Buddha. And it's just so touching how the family just loved Shawn and embraced Shawn. So anyway, they were taking care of Shawn and just, you know, watching him and just really just took great care of him. So as God began to show us things right there in the hospital, it wasn't too long, and we got him on the plane, and we were in the hospital, and got Shawn all checked in, and we had to go, I had to tell you this. So I didn't know how much money to take to Thailand. I had no clue. And I kept hearing this $5,000, $5,000, and I thought, there is no way I'm going to this country with $5,000 of cash in my hand. But it was strong. I went to the bank, got $5,000 on the way. We check him into the hospital, and they said, we need $4,000 cash right now, or we're not touching it. I said, great, no problem. What about the bills? So they had to check every bill. And $4,000 of those bills were the same, because if they're not the same, they don't take it. They wouldn't take it. So those $4,000 is just what she needed of the same bills. So that was God. Of course, that was God. I'm not that smart. So we got him there, and we were sitting in the waiting room, and we were exhausted. I'd been up about 36 hours at this point. And sitting in the waiting room, Shawn was taken care of. And Kham just looked at me and she says, who is this Jesus? She said, I prayed to Buddha and nothing happened. She said, you prayed to God and something happened. I prayed to Jesus. She said, who is this Jesus? I want to know how you can do what you did. And I said, it wasn't me, honey. I said, that was Jesus and Jesus alone. So right there in the waiting room, she gave her heart to the Lord.
Wow.
And we weren't able to see Shawn, so we went back to the room, and the next day, Shawn literally raised his hand. He was paralyzed completely. He raised his hand, and he just said, look, through his lips, look. And he kept going like this, and I said, that is a miracle. That was miracle, I don't know how many on the list of miracles, but that was one. And I reached down to his ear, and I said, Shawn, Mom gave her heart to the Lord. And through his vent tube, he said, then this was worth it. Because God needed to show up where nothing else would have done anything. God showed up in the situation that would have killed Shawn. He had 3 strains of pneumonia in the hospital that he contracted. He had MRSA, he had Guillain-Barré, and he had Campobacilli. Any one of those could have killed Shawn, and he's here. And he's not only here, he has a family that loves him. A family that's serving the Lord, and he has 2 beautiful girls. And that little girl, our littlest baby Dow, who is a miracle in herself, she is here, and because Shawn is alive.
Wow.
So that's our story, and there's a lot more to it, and if you want to know it, I'm happy to share. So thank you.
Wow.